of this year. And according to police, the Department of Children and Families, DCF, conducted a follow-up visit at the home involving a 6-week-old infant male. Now, the reason for the follow-up was this infant was allegedly born with marijuana in his system as well as kratom. The police report cites medical experts explaining that infants exposed to those substances are at great risk for strokes, cardiac arrhythmias, respiratory distress, and compromise, impaired neurocognitive development, and severe withdrawal symptoms. So it makes sense that DCF wanted to keep a close eye on this baby. And the sheriff told me that the mom, she also allegedly admitted to smoking marijuana throughout the pregnancy. DCF contacted the boy's mom, 26-year-old Jodie Cannon, and observed that the infant was extremely underweight. DCF then asked Cannon when she last took her son to the doctor, and she said she took him when he was 2 weeks old, but she couldn't provide an exact date. And when DCF asked Cannon why her son hadn't been to the doctor since, she said their pediatric office closed and she hadn't found another doctor yet. Now, because of the alleged malnourished state of Cannon's son, DCF advised Cannon that they would take her and the infant to the emergency room. But Cannon reportedly declined. And that is when DCF reportedly took matters into their own hands and
Deeper Men IA and Femless conducted a follow-up visit at the home involving a 6-week-old infant male. The infant was born with marijuana in his system. The mother admitted to smoking marijuana throughout the pregnancy. That is the official entry point, a routine follow-up, a standard check. But what DCF walked into on July 7th was not a case of a messy house or a mother who fell on hard times. It was a triage. A life or death intervention for a child who had lost 1.3 pounds in 6 weeks. A baby whose body was shutting down, whose heart rate was so low that hospital staff would later describe him as being on the verge of death. Picture a padlock on a refrigerator door, not a lock to keep children out, but a lock on a fridge that was already empty. A padlock where there should have been food. That is the symbol of this case. A mechanism of control that accomplished nothing but ensuring no one could access what wasn't there. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Endless Crime, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. This all begins in Putnam County, Florida. The Department of Children and Families arrived for that routine follow-up visit because the infant had tested positive for THC at birth. The mother, Jodie Cannon, reportedly admitted to using marijuana throughout the pregnancy. DCF observed that the infant was extremely underweight. They asked Cannon when she last took her son to the doctor. She said he was 2 weeks old, but she couldn't provide an exact date. When asked why he hadn't been back, she said their pediatric office closed and she hadn't found another doctor yet. Because of the alleged malnourished state, DCF advised Cannon that they would take her and the infant to the emergency room. She declined, so DCF took matters into their own hands and called first responders. Once at the ER, there were positive findings of medical neglect. The infant required PCU admission due to low heart rate, low body temperature, and low weight. The hospital report stated, and this is directly from the court filing, without DCF's intervention on July 7th, the infant could have easily died.
Called first responders because this baby needed immediate medical attention. Here's what police said happened at the hospital. Quote, once at the ER, there were positive findings of medical neglect. The infant required PICU admission due to low heart rate, low body temperature, and low weight. Without DCF's intervention on July 7th, the infant could have easily died. There were also positive findings of failure to thrive. The infant lost 600 grams, which is around 1.3 pounds, between birth and 6 weeks of age, which is a lot. The mother, and we're talking about Jodie Cannon here, did not recognize the severity of the illness and even refused when told to go to the ER. As a result, Jodie Cannon was arrested on July 21st for charges of child neglect with great bodily harm, a second-degree felony, along with a third-degree felony charge of child neglect. Now, her infant son, along with her 2 other young children, were also placed in the custody of DCF. And it is, when you hear about how close, according to law enforcement, this 6-week-old was to dying, it is such a good thing that that child is now in the custody of someone else, if convicted on all.
The mother did not recognize the severity of the illness and even refused when told to go to the ER. That is the first piece of hard evidence. That is the moment the system stepped in. Bureaucracy watched. The system failed. On July 21st, Jodie Cannon was arrested for child neglect with great bodily harm, a second-degree felony, along with a third-degree felony charge of child neglect. Her infant son, along with her 2 other young children, were placed in the custody of DCF. If convicted on all charges, Cannon could face up to 20 years in prison. But this is where the story pivots from a single mother's neglect to something far more systemic. Because a week later, on July 28th, the Putnam County SWAT team and detectives served a search warrant.
Custody in this case. So I want to fast forward a week later. We're on July 28th now, and the Putnam County SWAT team and detectives with the Putnam County Sheriff's Office served a search warrant for Jodie Cannon's house. And based on information they received from DCF and other resources about the alleged unsafe conditions that the infant child was living in, they had to move in. And when law enforcement arrived at the home, they discovered even more people had been living there aside from Jodie Cannon and her children. And the sheriff told me that he believes that a total of 4 children were living in this house. Also living in the home, Jordan Wilson. He is the biological father to Jodie Cannon's children. Also there, Melissa Keel, who is the children's biological grandmother, John Keel, who is Jodie Cannon's stepfather, along with Melissa and John's adoptive son. So he is
on Jodie Cannon's house. Based on information from DCF about the alleged unsafe conditions, they had to move in. When law enforcement arrived, they discovered even more people had been living there aside from Cannon and her children. Also in the home, Jordan Wilson, the biological father, Melissa Keel, the children's grandmother, John Keel, the stepfather, and their adoptive son. 4 adults, 4 children, all under one roof. And what law enforcement found and so had become the centerpiece of a case that the sheriff would later describe as one of the most profound child neglect cases in his 25-year career. According to the search warrant affidavit, prior to entry, a strong odor of animal urine was emitting from inside the home. The entryway led to the living room, where the infant's grandparents slept on couches. The juvenile slept on a filthy mattress on the floor.
Because now law enforcement is gearing up to enter the home. And the alleged details there are hard to stomach, especially when you think of the 4 children who were living inside. Quote, the entryway led to the living room, which is where the infant's grandparents, Melissa and John Keel, slept on couches. The juvenile slept on a filthy mattress on the floor. There is an infestation of flies, not only in the living room, but also in the kitchen and hallway. The flies were also...
There was an infestation of flies not only in the living room, but also in the kitchen and hallway. The flies were swarming the area where the juvenile was sleeping. Animal feces and urine were visible on the floor. On one spot near a washer and dryer were fresh animal feces with another swarm of flies surrounding it. The kitchen sink had a large number of soiled pots and pans that had not been cleaned for a large amount of time. Under the sink, the pipes had leaked, causing the wood floor to rot with signs of mold. The roof above the dining room had been patched but was structurally not sound. The ceiling that had mold on it had been painted over with white paint. The only usable bathroom was in disrepair. The bedroom used by the infant's father was cluttered and deplorable, with flies and cockroaches throughout. Used dinner dishes were found on the floor of a dresser for an unknown length of time. But perhaps the most damning detail was this: the refrigerator in the kitchen had barely enough food.
This gets worse. Quote, the residents had a refrigerator in the kitchen that had barely enough food for all 4 people to eat. There were also bugs and a strong unhealthy odor coming from inside the refrigerator that almost made a SWAT team member vomit. A second stand-up.
For all 4 people to eat, there were bugs and a strong unhealthy odor coming from inside that almost made a SWAT team member vomit. A second stand-up freezer was empty but also had a strong odor. The sheriff's office said 4 dogs and 3 kittens were voluntarily surrendered to animal services. Due to the voluntary surrender, detectives are not pursuing animal neglect charges. But the human neglect is undeniable. The sheriff's lead investigator, Detective Chris Ashley, stated that when they interviewed the residents, no matter what the question that was asked, they had an excuse for everything. The sheriff himself offered this assessment. This is nothing more than a case of pure, unadulterated laziness. Now, listen to the timeline the sheriff's office provided. A hurricane had torn a hole in the roof about 3 years earlier. Instead of getting it professionally repaired, they put a tarp over it. The tarp leaked. Water came through the ceiling. Black mold formed.
Floor, near a washer and dryer, were fresh animal feces with another swarm of flies surrounding it. The kitchen, the sink, had a large number of soiled pots and pans that had not been cleaned for a large amount of time. Under the sink, the pipes had leaked at some point, which caused the wood floor to rot with signs of mold showing. The roof above the dining room had been patched but was structurally not sound, according to code enforcement. The ceiling that had mold on it had been painted over with white paint. As law enforcement continued searching the home, they discovered the only usable bathroom was allegedly in disrepair, and the floor under the sink was rotting with water damage. As for the bedroom, the infant's father, Jordan Wilson.
They patched the ceiling with plywood and painted over the mold. They did not remove it. The mold continued to grow. They knew the conditions were bad. They had the means to clean. Cleaning supplies were reportedly found in the home. They just didn't do it. And here is the question that hangs over this entire case. When DCF first intervened on July 7th, why was the mother allowed to keep the child at all? The infant was born with marijuana in his system. The mother admitted to smoking throughout the pregnancy. The child was malnourished. DCF had the authority to act. They did act, but they acted only after the mother refused to go to the ER. They acted only when the baby's life was in immediate danger. The paperwork already knew. The signs were there. The system had multiple touch points: the hospital birth, the DCF visit, the follow-up. And yet the child still ended up in a house with no food, swarming flies, and animal feces on the floor. Bureaucracy watched. The system failed. Jordan Wilson, Melissa Keel, and John Keel were all arrested on third-degree felony child neglect in connection to the infant, which carries a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. Additional charges are possible for all 4 family members related to the other children residing in the home. The house has been condemned by code enforcement. The sheriff, when asked what should be done with it, said, "Probably the best way to address this home would be with a match and to start over. It's that bad." This is not a case about poverty. The sheriff's office was clear there were cleaning supplies in the home. They had the means. This is not about mental illness or addiction that rendered the parents incapable. The mother was functional enough to procure Delta-9 THC from a convenience store. She was functional enough to offer excuses. This is about a choice, a sustained, daily choice to ignore the suffering of helpless children, a choice to paint over mold instead of removing it, a choice to let flies swarm a sleeping child, a choice to lock a refrigerator that was already empty. And here's the most damning part: when DCF offered to take the baby to the ER, the mother refused. She had the opportunity to save her child. She declined. Bureaucracy watched. The system failed. The sheriff said it best: "Frankly, I think if they had been living out in the woods as feral children, they'd have probably been in a much cleaner, safer environment than what they were in this home." That is the indictment. That is the verdict. The state has filed its charges. The case has been referred to the state attorney's office. But we are left with a question that no court filing can answer. How many more children are living in homes that have been painted over, patched up, and ignored? We direct you to the Putnam County Sheriff's Office search warrant affidavit for this case. Read it yourself. Look at the section describing the refrigerator. Look at the section describing the flies. And ask yourself, what does it take for the system to act before a child is on the verge of death? That is the question for the comments. The evidence is public. The transcripts are available. Follow the documents. This is endless crime. If this case shows anything, it is that neglect does not announce itself. It hides behind excuses. It hides behind tarps and paint. And it waits for someone to notice. Like, share, turn on notifications. We follow the evidence wherever it leads.